Hello and welcome to another modelling video. This is Alan from the McConnor Man at YouTube with another tutorial. Today we're going to be talking about removing nubs and nub marks on your plastic if you're choosing not to paint your surfaces. There is a lot of people who are snappers. They snap the Bandai, Star Wars and other pre-coloured kits together, do a tiny bit of detailing, top coat, and that's as far as they go. And others that paint. Now when you cut, it pinches the gate, not necessarily severs it, and leaves a white distorted mark in coloured plastic. Now if you're painting it, you cut it, you sand it back, it leaves more scarring and markings. You don't really care as the painting covers this. If you're someone who is looking to retain the original condition of the paint, if it's a clear model or a solid colour model, this method will work. If you're utilising a model kit that has a special coating, that's a foil over plastic, electrocoating, or a special paint applied over it like a holographic or pearlescent film, this method is not going to work and will damage the surface further. So that is a bit of a warning. Now you can utilise one of these fancy expensive single bladed nippers. It will make the nub very small and not discoloured, though there is a nub nonetheless, and that's just poor workmanship. We're going to be using the Tamiya nippers, so they're sharp on both ends. It is a little higher quality than your standard nippers. Your standard nippers will also do the trick utilising this method. What I do always recommend for hobbyists is, besides the ownership of a sharp new hobby blade or X-Acto knife, a very high quality file. And the one I decided to use is the Tamiya branded one. It's got a very unique pattern across it. It's designed only for plastic. It cuts a decent amount of material and polishes up a bit, so it scars plastic minimally and leaves the surface nice and shiny. I find this particular tool to be absolutely amazing for mold marks or flash marks, though if we are able to use these tools in sync in polishing up a nub mark on a clear piece, you can do it on plastic. So consider it your snapping tutorial as well as your clear parts tutorial, as someone did yell at me on Facebook for not having that sort of content. The first step for cutting out this large piece, what we're going to do is cut approximately a few mil. So not the gate, but the actual sprue, and we'll have quite a large nub mark or nub left over. If you use single-sided, very thin bladed nippers, this method is also ideal. Do it very careful, very slowly as you'll twist the blade and snap it. For something this strong, same advice applies. And when we cut it closer to the model, you don't cut it up and tight close. You stress the plastic, you damage it. You cut it a little off and you make sure that it is raised ever so slightly. This is where we employ a sharp blade, and from both ends we carve it off, leaving tiny white dot that is ever so raised. Now finally, utilizing our file, you slowly sand it off, and this is going to take a while. Go in one direction, and eventually as you keep cutting and polishing into the material, it's just going to slowly disappear because you're removing the material to the clear or coloured moulded plastic. And you can see that it is slowly getting smaller and smaller. Now if we look, we have left a bit of fogged plastic along this surface. Now what we can do to treat this further, to get rid of that and go back to our clear plastic, we utilise 2000 grit sandpaper. Make sure it's nice and wet. and we sand it. When it's wet, it looks absolutely clear and nice, but as it dries, it's going to show the remnants of the nub mark. It's going to show the remnants of the scarring from the firework. The next trick you can either do is utilize finer sandpaper, 3, 5, 7,000 grits, as I've used in my sanding tutorial, or with the application of gloss clear over the whole part. It will be a bit shinier, removing the finish, but it will be invisible. If you polish it and utilize higher grit sandpaper, it will make that also disappear, but that is far more time consuming. That is the finish up to 5,000 grit sandpaper. Compound polish would improve it even further, but I think due to how important that surface is, completely unnecessary. We're going to move on to gluing two parts together, as well as removing flash mark and utilizing the gloss clear method. So something that's a full clear model or more complex. Remember that all of this can also be utilized on a solid colored plastic, and that would be a lot less harder to mask as clear. If you can master clear, you can master a solid color surface. To glue or adhere a clear part together, it's best to use something that isn't solvent or cement based, and a clear adhesive is ideal. I'm using wood or PVA glue, and all we're doing is just dabbing a little bit into the sockets for the butt joints where you've got the pin that goes into. These are previously been loosened, so the part can come apart and back together again. And once glued together with wood glue, it's going to be absolute solid shut. There will be no pressure on the pegs whatsoever. And if solvents are used or any sort of pressure will be applied, it will not split over time, and it should dry solid and clear possibly. If you are very, very lucky, it potentially will even not leave a seam. So there you go. It's not much there, and it's going to be absolutely clear later. This is an action base for the Providence, and we'll look at it when it's completely done. And here's it all glued together. You can see the white from the glue. This will dry clear, and we'll give this a few days to harden. Evidence that this works, this little plug here was very, very loose. A substantial amount of PVA glue was used on the inside and the back, and it's dried absolutely clear. All you can see is its actual extrusion into the material. So this is what it looked like as it was just snapped together, and there is no way of popping out. So after a couple of days drying, it's looking very, very smooth, very glossy, not too bad. But if you look very closely, you've got a bit of a matted, or not as glossy in some of the areas that we removed the nubs. And also along here there's a bit of glue slag. So what we're going to do is quickly buff out the glue slag. And the best thing is everything's fully articulated, it won't break, it won't split. Really, really good. And once it's just polished up to be a little flat, doesn't require that much work, it is just wood glue. Dry off most, if not all, the moisture, and the slag is gone. Though there was a serious joining mark around here, and the clear paint is going to deal with it. Now this part is plastic, bare plastic, and it had a seam line or a joining line going right down the middle, so the whole thing has been sanded. Once we top coat that as well, we'll be able to see what a coat of gloss, and matte can also do the same thing if you want a matte coat, to a slightly scuffed up area that used to have a imperfection and dealt with sandpaper. So this piece is a little too big to mount on the skewer, so I'm going to paint it one side, let it dry sufficiently. After 24 hours, flip it and paint the other side. I've got some Tamiya lacquer clear from when I was doing the Tamiya tests, and shall spray it to get rid of those imperfections and give it a deeper gloss finish. It should also be noted that rattle cans with a gloss clear or matte can be applied, as well as hand painting of gloss watered down and in a couple of layers. To tell the truth, a rattle can gloss would probably be a far superior finish on a clear unprimed surface, as overspray going over a semi-wet surface can frost it up a bit. You will have to put quite a heavy wet coat to get the ideal finish. And here is the clear pieces. You can see, and we'll even zoom in, we've got no nubs, and we'll go to the sides. We've got no stress marks, we've got no flash marks, and that is just from good sanding, 2 clear coats, and PVA or white glue in the seams. It's nothing too hard, and it will also work on bare plastic. Thank you very much for watching. As always, until next time, stay tuned for further content. We upload at least once a week to mostly twice a week. Have a look at Facebook. We have new things posted on there that are relevant, interesting products, work in progresses, all that sort of stuff. Description section has all sorts of sources and links. And see you later. Have a good one.